For each one of us, discovering who we are, or self-determination, is one of the most important things that we do as human beings. And a lot of times we like to think that the majority of that process happens from within. That we already know what we don't like, we already know what we do like. But we tend to neglect how big of a role all the outside influences play on that process. Sometimes influences can come from places you had no idea about. In this next segment, we look at Matt and his family and how they dealt with racial acceptance and rejection based on not what part of the country they lived in, but what part of the neighborhood. Let's see what he has to say. I imagine coming into like your own identity was different for you and your brother, just by your personalities and stuff like that. Do you remember like an instance or a time period when you kind of started addressing it? Most biracial people I talk to, they think about like a certain incident or a situation where it became apparent and they started thinking about it.
I think that identity first came up in terms of it first coming up happened when I was living in a place, Falls City, Washington, which was like I think like a half an hour outside of Seattle. So I was in fifth grade. I was in fifth grade at the time, and there was a group of kids who were just like straight up to my brother and I, like, yeah, we don't want you to hang out with us because you're black. Yeah, and so after, having, I guess, 10, 11 years of like that never being an issue, it really kind of ran us over in the face, and especially me, because Sean still had his other group of friends, but I was very quiet and reserved. So it was like, oh God, like I don't know exactly what to do. So that's when I really started thinking about, like, I guess really my black identity and thinking of myself as a black man, because it was just an outright rejection of me for that. And like,
you kind of got told,
like, hey, you're a black guy. Some people aren't cool with that. And apparently some fifth graders aren't, which was kind of crazy to think about. And like, there was other things like, kids like using the N-word and stuff like that. And luckily enough, there were some really good teachers in that environment who were able to kind of help us out with that and kind of were like, hey, white kid who just used the N-word, if you did that in actual Seattle, in the city, you'd probably be dead, because there's a lot of black people there, and they wouldn't be very happy about you throwing that around like it's a frisbee.
Yeah,
but
we're only 10 minutes from downtown. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly. But it was so that was the first time I really came, I guess, face to face with racial identity. So from that point on, I always thought of myself as like, I am a black man. And then that dynamic shifted again my sophomore year of high school. So I spent my freshman year of high school in Pittsburgh. And there it was like, in my grade, it was like myself, my brother Sean, and like 4 or 5 other black kids in a class of like, gosh, I want to say somewhere around like maybe like 80, 90, small private school. Yeah, so like we were all pretty, close together and we're cool with each other. I moved out to California again for the second time, to the Bay Area, and the school I went to was much, much, much more diverse. So it was really the first time that my everyday school interactions involved other black people. And so, I kind of came in with this mentality of like, yeah, I'm a black guy, despite the fact that I look like I do. I guess for people listening, I get a lot of comparisons to kind of Klay Thompson in terms of my skin tone and like appearance a little bit, but much whiter still. But yeah, so I got to California, and a lot of the other black students weren't cool with me claiming that identity.
Wow. Yeah,
it was because I had grown up in a place of privilege, growing up in the suburbs. It was there was a lot of people that just like weren't particularly okay with that. So then it was, the first instance was having it was people telling me you're black, and then the next shift was people being like, you're not nearly as black as you think you are, or even you're not black at all. Nice. So even in some of the basketball games we were playing, and if we were playing against teams from like the inner city, I remember hearing people's parents like yelling at their children, like, you know, take his white ass to school. He's not like you. He's not like you. Because like people knew that like I was black, because I was a good player, so people knew who I was, and obviously they knew my brother, so to be like, they'd look at the roster, Sean Duckett, Matt Duckett, and it would be like, okay, so those are mixed race kids. And so I'd have these families like literally heckling my brother and I while we were on the court, basically trying to like tell their kids like that's a white person, like, which has nothing to do with the game of basketball. Clearly, it was pretty messed up. And my mom, you know, she can be a lioness in a lot of ways. Was like not about, like, she almost got into a lot of fights with a lot of parents over stuff like that. Nice. Yeah, so it was a real.
And that's the Bay Area, right? That's
yeah.
Not...